Commander Elena Rodriguez stood at the viewport of the International Space Station, her coffee forgotten in her hand as she watched the impossible unfold before her. The object had appeared without warning, a massive vessel that seemed to ripple with internal light, its crystalline surface refracting the sun's rays in ways that defied physics. "Houston, please confirm you're seeing this," she transmitted, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Unknown vessel approximately 2 kilometers off our port side, exhibiting unusual luminescent properties." The response came through with unusual static. "We see it, Commander. All global defense systems are tracking. Stand by for." The transmission cut off as a burst of energy erupted from the vessel's hull. Elena's first thought was weapon fire, but as the energy dissipated, she realized it was more like watching a wounded creature bleeding light into space. The vessel's surface dimmed momentarily before brightening again in a pattern that reminded Elena of a heartbeat. Then came the transmission, not through their communication systems, but somehow projected directly onto every screen in the station, creating images that moved like liquid art. To the sentience of Earth, the message began, translating itself in real time through patterns of light and color. "We are the Lumini, and we seek sanctuary. The hegemony pursues us. They name us evolutionary dead weight, inefficient, a waste of resources. Our crime is our nature. We process reality through art, music, and light. We cannot conform to their standards of pure logic and efficiency." Elena watched as the message continued, showing images of a civilization where art wasn't just decoration, but a fundamental way of life. Buildings that sang in the wind, vehicles that moved like dancing light, children whose thoughts painted the air around them. "We did not choose this conflict," the message continued. "The hegemony demanded we submit to neural reconstruction, the elimination of our artistic perception in favor of their approved cognitive patterns. Many of our people were taken. We are the last free colony, carrying our children and our way of life." The vessel shuddered, releasing another burst of energy. Elena could see now that what she'd first taken for aesthetic design was damage. Massive ruptures in the crystalline hull barely contained by fields of pure light. Director Chen of the United Earth Space Agency's face appeared on the main screen. "Commander Rodriguez, you're our eyes up there. What's your assessment?" Elena studied the vessel, watching as it continued to pulse with weakening light. "Director, they're dying. Whatever drove them here took everything they had. This isn't a trick or an invasion. It's a desperate last stand. The hegemony fleet will arrive in 48 hours, the Lumini transmission continued. They do not recognize concepts of sanctuary or mercy. We offer what knowledge we have, our art, our perspective on the universe, everything we are in exchange for protection." As if to emphasize their desperation, a section of the vessel's hull suddenly crystallized and shattered, spreading glittering debris into space. The pattern of light pulses grew more erratic. "Director," Elena said, her decision made, "request permission to attempt emergency docking procedures. They're not going to last 48 minutes, let alone hours." There was a long pause from Earth. Elena could imagine the frantic discussions happening in every major capital. Humanity's first contact with alien life was supposed to be carefully managed, diplomatic, controlled. Instead, they were facing an immediate moral choice that would define their species in the eyes of the galaxy. Finally, Director Chen's voice returned. "Permission granted, Commander. God help us all if we're wrong about this, but I'm not going to be the one who watched an entire species die on our doorstep." Elena was already moving, preparing the station's emergency protocols. "Houston, begin calculating docking trajectories. And someone get me in touch with the best xenobiologists and artists we have. Something tells me we're going to need both." As she worked, Elena caught a glimpse of Earth below, its surface a swirl of blue and white clouds. Somewhere up there, a vastly superior force was approaching, ready to punish humanity for whatever choice they made here. But as she watched another pulse of light ripple through the dying Lumini vessel, She knew they really had no choice at all. Some lines weren't meant to be crossed. Some principles weren't meant to be compromised. And if humanity had to announce its presence to the galaxy by standing up for a species that saw the universe through art rather than cold efficiency, well, there were worse hills to die on. The docking procedures began, and with them, humanity's first step into a much larger, more complex universe than anyone had imagined. They had 48 hours to figure out how to protect a species that painted with light against an empire that dealt in absolute logic. Elena smiled grimly. If there was one thing humans had proved throughout their history, it was that they performed best when all the odds and all the experts said they couldn't do something. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity was really made of. Dr. Maya Patel had never seen anything like the images on her screen. The Lumini vessel's internal architecture defied every principle of engineering she'd studied. Corridors that curved according to musical harmonies, support structures that resembled abstract sculptures, and walls that rippled with living light. But it was the children that took her breath away. Through the emergency team's helmet cams, she watched as they discovered the vessel's central chamber. Hundreds of crystalline pods lined the walls, each containing a young Lumini suspended in a matrix of pure light. Their forms shifted with their dreams, casting ever-changing patterns across the chamber's ceiling. Their biological processes are integrated with artistic expression at the cellular level. Dr. Paddle reported to the emergency UN Security Council session. They don't just create art, they quite literally think in art. Their neural patterns manifest as visual and musical phenomena. Fascinating, the Chinese representative interrupted, but irrelevant to the immediate crisis. The hegemony fleet will reach Earth orbit in 36 hours. Their advanced transmission was quite clear. Harboring defective specimens will be considered an act of war. The chamber erupted into argument. On the main screen, tactical projections showed the approaching hegemony fleet, 15 vessels of unprecedented size and capability. Earth's combined military forces wouldn't last an hour against such technology. If I may continue, Maya raised her voice slightly, drawing attention back to her presentation. The Lumini's artistic perception isn't a cultural choice or a lifestyle. It's fundamental to their cognitive processes, what the hegemony demands. Neural reconstruction to enforce pure logic would effectively destroy their consciousness. It's genocide dressed as efficiency. They're asking us to die for their art. The Russian representative countered. Humanity cannot sacrifice itself for. He was cut off as the chamber screen suddenly flickered, filling with impossible colors. A Lumini child's face appeared, its skin rippling with patterns that somehow conveyed both fear and hope. "We dream in light," the child said, its words translated through shifting patterns. "We see connections you cannot, possibilities hidden in the spaces between thought and form. The hegemony calls this weakness. We call it truth." The child raised its hands, and the air itself seemed to dance. The tactical displays showing the hegemony fleet transformed, becoming a three-dimensional symphony of light and motion. But now Maya could see something new in the patterns, vulnerabilities, rhythms, mathematical harmonies that the hegemony's rigid logic had never considered. "Your species creates art because you choose to," the child continued. "We create art because it is how we understand reality. Together, perhaps we see a fuller truth than either alone." Maya watched understanding dawn on the faces around her. The Lumini weren't just refugees. They were a fundamentally different way of perceiving and interacting with the universe. Their destruction would eliminate not just a species, but an entire way of knowing reality. Secretary General Ameri stood slowly. "Dr. Patel, you've spent the most time studying our guests. What exactly are they offering us?" Maya took a deep breath. "Sir, they're offering us art as a weapon. Their perception of reality. The patterns they see, the harmonies they understand, combined with human innovation and determination. We could show the hegemony that there's more than one way to be advanced. And if we fail, then we fail knowing we stood for something worth standing for." Maya gestured to the screens, still dancing with impossible light. The hegemony wants to enforce a single way of thinking across the galaxy. If we surrender to that demand now, we're accepting limits on human potential before we've even reached the stars. Silence fell as her words sank in. Outside the UN building, crowds had gathered, millions watching the Lumini vessel glowing in orbit, visible even in daylight. All across Earth, artists were already creating works inspired by humanity's first contact. Musicians were attempting to translate the Lumini's light patterns into sound. Scientists were proposing new theories based on their impossible technology. The Secretary General looked around the chamber. We all know what's at stake. The hegemony offers us peace and eventual membership if we surrender the Lumini. They offer us destruction if we refuse. He paused, watching the patterns of light still dancing across the screens. But they also offer us a choice, a chance to declare what humanity stands for among the stars. One by one, the Security Council members began to nod. There would be opposition, of course. Fear and pragmatism would demand surrender. But as Maya watched the rippling lights of the Lumini child's display, she knew humanity had already chosen. They had 36 hours to prepare for war with the most powerful civilization in known space. 36 hours to find a way to combine human ingenuity with Lumini perception. 36 hours to prove that art and logic, emotion and reason weren't opposing forces but complementary truths. Maya smiled as she began organizing research teams. The hegemony thought they were coming to crush a primitive species harboring defective refugees. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to see beauty in difference, to find power in diversity, and to stand up for what was right, even against impossible odds. The real question wasn't whether Earth would survive the coming battle. The real question was whether the galaxy was ready for what would happen when human determination met Lumini perception. The answer was already writing itself across the sky in letters of light. Lieutenant James Chen watched in amazement as the holographic display in front of him transformed. What had been a standard tactical readout became a living artwork, with military formations flowing like brushstrokes and defensive positions pulsing with rhythmic energy. Beside him, the young Lumini named Aria moved her hands like a conductor, her skin shimmering with concentrated thought. "There," she said, her translation manifesting as patterns of light. "Do you see it now?" James did see it. The hegemony's approach vector, previously just a series of coordinates, now revealed itself as a mathematical harmony, beautiful, precise, and utterly predictable. "They think in perfect geometric patterns," Aria explained, her skin rippling with blue-green insight. "The hegemony believes efficiency is found in absolute order, but order without variation becomes vulnerable." James finished, understanding dawning. "They'll expect us to either surrender or mount a conventional defense. But you're showing us how to turn their precision against them." Around them, the vast underground facility beneath the Atacama Desert hummed with activity. It had been 24 hours since Earth's decision to protect the Lumini, and humanity was doing what it did best, innovating at breakneck speed. Dr. Sarah Wong burst into the command center, her lab coat stained with luminescent residue. "It works," she announced, holding up what looked like a standard fighter pilot's helmet. "The neural interface is stable. Human pilots can now see tactical space the way the Lumini do." James took the helmet, studying the crystalline modifications that now adorned its surface. "How many can we modify before they arrive?" "That's the beautiful part," Sarah grinned. "The Lumini children, they're not just helping us build these, they're teaching them to grow." On the main screen, footage showed assembly lines where rows of military hardware were being transformed. Lumini children moved among tanks, aircraft, and satellites, their touch leaving trails of living light that slowly crystallized into new configurations. Standard weapons were becoming works of art that retained their deadly purpose while gaining entirely new capabilities. "The hegemony thinks art is inefficient," Aria said, her skin darkening with what James had learned was determination. "They forgot that nature's greatest weapons are also its most beautiful. the poison dart frog's colors, the jellyfish's bioluminescence, the mantis shrimp's hyperspectral vision, and now Earth's defenses, James added, watching as a squadron of fighters took off for a test flight, their hulls rippling with Lumini modifications that bent light in impossible ways. The facility's director, General Martinez, called for attention. Latest intelligence suggests the hegemony fleet has accelerated. They'll arrive in 12 hours. She paused, letting that sink in. They likely detected our defensive preparations and want to strike before we're ready. A ripple of tension passed through the room, but James noticed something interesting. Where the human staff showed anxiety, the Lumini's skin patterns shifted to display something closer to anticipation. "You're not worried," he said to Arya. The young Lumini's skin sparkled with what he'd learned was their equivalent of a smile. Worry is a response to uncertainty, but we've shown you how to see the patterns. The hegemony's greatest strength, their absolute dedication to logical perfection, is about to become their greatest weakness. On the main screen, satellite footage showed the fruits of 24 hours of human-Lumini collaboration. Earth's orbital defense grid had been transformed. Solar satellites now doubled as artistic installations that channeled energy in ways that defied physics. Space stations rippled with living light, their new crystalline surfaces hiding weapons that thought in colors and struck with surgical precision. But the most dramatic change was visible in Earth's atmosphere. The Lumini had shown humans how to create what they called resonance art, massive planet-spanning patterns of energy that were both beautiful and functional. To human eyes, it looked like the aurora borealis had been weaponized, spreading to cover the entire planet in shifting curtains of light. "Final systems check," General Martinez ordered. "I want every modified weapon platform tested and every pilot synced with their new interfaces. The hegemony thinks they're rushing us, but thanks to our new friends, we're about to show them something they've never seen before." James watched as Arya returned to the tactical display, her movements now in perfect sync with the human operators around her. The Lumini child wasn't just showing them new ways to fight. She was teaching them new ways to see. The coming battle wouldn't be won by superior firepower or advanced technology. It would be won because humanity had done what it did best, adapted, innovated, and embraced new perspectives that their enemies considered worthless. As the countdown to contact continued, James couldn't help but smile. The hegemony was about to learn a harsh lesson about the power of art, the strength of diversity, and the sheer stubborn creativity of a species that had turned its entire planet into a combat gallery. In 12 hours, Earth would either fall or become the first civilization to prove that beauty wasn't just worth fighting for, it was worth fighting with. And thanks to their new allies, they were about to put on the most spectacular show the galaxy had ever seen. The hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 15 massive ships arranged in a geometric pattern so precise it seemed drawn with divine compass. For a moment, they hung motionless against the backdrop of stars, their gunmetal hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. In Earth's Defense Command Center, Admiral Helena Santos watched through eyes enhanced by Lumini tech. The enemy ships were beautiful in their cold perfection, she had to admit, but there was something lifeless about their symmetry, something that spoke of calculation without creativity. "They're scanning us," Lieutenant Chen reported, his voice tight, reading massive energy spikes. The hegemony's response came as expected. A transmission on all frequencies, their computer-modulated voice devoid of emotion. Primitive species designation. Earth. You harbor defective elements that contaminate galactic efficiency. Surrender them immediately or face obsolescence. You have 5 minutes to comply. Helena smiled grimly. "Send our response, Lieutenant." Arya, their young Lumini tactical advisor, raised her hands. Around Earth, the aurora-like defense grid they created began to pulse with new patterns. Colors that hadn't existed 24 hours ago painted the atmosphere in shifting waves. It wasn't just a show of defiance. It was an announcement that humanity had chosen its path among the stars. "Response sent," Chen confirmed. They're laughing. Admiral. The hegemony fleet began to move, spreading out in textbook assault formation. Their first volley was designed to overwhelm Earth's conventional defenses, a massive barrage of energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. But Earth's defenses were no longer conventional. Now, Helena ordered softly. The atmospheric light show suddenly crystallized. Every pattern, every shifting color became a lens, a refractor, a weapon. The hegemony's attack, so precisely calculated, so perfectly orchestrated, scattered into harmless fragments of light and energy. Impossible. The hegemony transmission crackled. Your defensive capabilities were assessed. This does not compute. That's the point, Helena murmured. Lieutenant, signal the fighter squadrons. Show them what humanity and Lumini can do together. From bases around the globe, Earth's transformed fighters rose. Their hulls rippled with living light, each one a unique combination of human engineering and Lumini artistry. They moved not in rigid formations, but in flowing patterns that seemed choreographed, each squadron dancing through space like schools of bioluminescent fish. The hegemony responded with mechanical precision, launching waves of autonomous drones. But the drones' targeting systems, designed to track logical flight paths and predictable evasive maneuvers, couldn't cope with pilots who now flew like artists painting with light and motion. Squadron 7 reports successful penetration of enemy shields. Chen called out, his voice rising with excitement. The Lumini harmonics are working. Their defensive algorithms can't adapt to weapons that evolve like living art. On the main display, Helena watched as humanity's first space battle unfolded like a performance. Hegemony ships, for all their power, couldn't track weapons that moved like brush strokes or defend against attacks that changed frequency like musical notes. Their perfect formations began to break apart as they faced something their logical minds couldn't process: warfare as an art form. But the hegemony hadn't conquered half the galaxy through weakness. Their flagship, a vessel the size of a small city, began charging what looked like a planet-killer weapon. They're going to try to brute force their way through, Helena realized. All units, fall back to secondary positions. Activate the resonance grid. This was the moment of truth. Every Lumini child on Earth had contributed to this defense, teaching humans how to create art on a planetary scale. Now, as the hegemony weapon reached full power, Earth itself began to sing. The atmospheric defense grid, the transformed satellites, every modified weapon platform, all of them synchronized into a single massive artwork. The effect was like turning the entire planet into an instrument played by a million hands. The hegemony fired. Their planet killer beam, powerful enough to crack Earth's crust, met an orchestrated chaos of light, sound, and energy. The beam didn't just disperse, it was absorbed, transformed, and reflected back as something new. Something beautiful. By all known laws of physics, this should not be possible, the hegemony transmission stated, actual emotion creeping into their synthetic voice for the first time. What are you? Helena nodded to Aria, who had been waiting for this moment. The young Lumini stepped forward, her skin blazing with triumphant light. We are what happens, she transmitted, her words carried on waves of living energy. When logic learns to dance, when efficiency gains a soul, when art becomes a way of seeing truth that numbers alone cannot capture. The hegemony fleet hung motionless, their perfect formation now in disarray, their most powerful weapons transformed into rainbow fractals that danced harmlessly through space. For the first time in their history, they faced something their algorithms couldn't quantify: the power of two species who had chosen to see the universe not just as it was, but as it could be. Final warning, Helena transmitted. Withdraw your forces and acknowledge Earth as a sanctuary for the Lumini, or stay and learn how many more impossible things we can accomplish together. The response came after a long pause. Without another word, the hegemony fleet began to retreat, their perfect geometry now marred by weapon scars that glowed with artistic energy. In the command center, Humans and Lumini embraced as cheers erupted. They had done more than win a battle. They had proven that there was room in the galaxy for more than one kind of advancement, more than one way of seeing truth. But Helena knew this was just the beginning. The hegemony would return, and Earth would need to be ready. Humanity had just painted its first strokes on the galactic canvas, and their art would need to keep evolving. She looked at Aria, whose skin now rippled with patterns that somehow conveyed both victory and possibility. What do you think they'll say about this day in their histories? The young Lumini's response came in a shimmer of iridescent light. They'll say it was the day the galaxy learned that the most powerful force in the universe isn't perfect order. It's the beauty of discovering new ways to be right. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the New Sydney Opera House hummed with an impossible symphony. Human musicians played alongside Lumini artists, creating music that could be both heard and seen. The concert hall's crystalline modifications transformed sound into living light that danced through the air, while Lumini children painted emotions directly into the consciousness of the audience. Dr. Maya Patel sat in the front row beside Ambassador Aria, who had grown from a refugee child into humanity's first official liaison to the galactic community. The young Lumini's skin rippled with joy as they watched their people's arts combine into something entirely new. The hegemony sent another diplomatic protest yesterday, Maya mentioned during an intermission. They claim our artistic contamination is spreading. Aria's skin flickered with what Maya had learned to recognize as amusement. They refer to the trading ships that returned from Earth last week, the ones whose crews began creating light sculptures in their off hours. Apparently, some of their younger members have started questioning the doctrine of pure efficiency. Maya smiled. It seems art is contagious. Above them, through the opera house's transparent dome, they could see Earth's new orbital defense network. The satellites and stations still served their military purpose, but they also formed the largest art installation ever created, a constantly shifting gallery that could be seen from anywhere on the planet's surface. But the most significant changes weren't visible from the ground. Research stations across the solar system were producing discoveries that defied conventional science. Human engineers, working with Lumini perception, had begun to understand the universe in ways that transcended traditional physics. They called it aesthetic mechanics, the art of seeing how reality truly flowed. The first joint colony ships launch next week. Aria noted, her patterns shifting to display the mission plans. 3 vessels, crewed by both species, seeking new worlds where we can grow together. Maya nodded. After the battle, humanity had faced a choice: return to business as usual or embrace their new path as artists of possibility. They had chosen to go all in. The United Earth government had established the Department of Artistic Innovation, combining scientific research with creative expression. Military academies now taught combat aesthetics alongside traditional strategy. Schools integrated Lumini perception techniques into their curricula, teaching children to see mathematics in music and physics in painting. We received another transmission from the Free Systems Alliance, Maya said. 3 more civilizations have requested asylum on Earth, species the hegemony deemed inefficient or developmentally stagnant. Aria's skin brightened, and Earth's response: the same as always, all are welcome, as long as they're willing to contribute their unique perspectives to our shared canvas. The concert resumed, but now the music told the story of the past 6 months. Human determination and Lumini perception had proven to be more than just a powerful defense. They were a blueprint for a different kind of future. The hegemony's empire had been built on the principle that there was only one correct path to advancement. Earth was proving that diversity wasn't just morally right, it was evolutionarily advantageous. Each new perspective, each different way of seeing the universe, added another tool to humanity's growing arsenal of possibilities. They'll come back, Aria said softly, her patterns showing concern. The hegemony cannot allow our success to continue challenging their worldview. Maya watched as the combined human Lumini orchestra reached their finale, creating effects that would have been considered impossible just months ago. Let them come. Every day, we learn new ways to see, new ways to fight, new ways to create. She gestured to the packed concert hall, where humans and Lumini sat together, experiencing art that touched both soul and mind. This is how we win, not just through better weapons or stronger shields, but by showing the galaxy a better way to exist. By proving that true advancement comes from embracing all the different ways of being right. Above them, Earth's artistic defense grid rippled with new patterns as another group of refugee ships entered the solar system. They came seeking sanctuary, but would find something more. A civilization that had learned to turn diversity into strength, art into power, and differences into opportunities. The hegemony had meant to make an example of Earth. Instead, they had helped forge something unprecedented. A society that could fight with beauty, defend with creativity, and advance through the simple act of accepting that there was always another way to see truth. As the concert reached its climax, light and sound merging into pure emotion, Maya realized that humanity had found its purpose among the stars. They would be the ones who proved that the universe wasn't just equations and efficiency. It was a canvas waiting for artists brave enough to paint new possibilities. The future would not belong to those who sought to enforce a single way of thinking. It would belong to those who dared to dream in colors that didn't exist yet, to sing in frequencies that defied physics, and to dance between the rigid lines of conventional wisdom. Earth had become more than just a sanctuary for artistic refugees. It had become a blueprint for a new kind of civilization, one that measured progress not in cold efficiency, but in the endless variety of ways that consciousness could explore, express, and expand upon the truth of existence. And that was an art form that even the hegemony couldn't suppress forever.